Guys, welcome back. It's Racer X, and today I want to do a little video about something many of you have asked me about on multiple occasions. Is the Hemi destined to blow up? What is the Hemi tick? How do you diagnose it? What to do if you hear it? Well, today I'm going to tell you all about it, so it should be a good one. Also, guys, if you're new to my channel, you haven't seen any of my videos before, do me a huge favor, slap that subscribe button for me. I've got a ton of fantastic content coming up in 2021, and here we go. We got the 1,000 horsepower helmet. God. So there has been a lot of speculation and in some cases a lot of fear about Hemis and whether or not they're reliable. Some people claim that this Hemi tick is a huge problem with a lot of these cars, especially the 6.4s and the 5.7 engines. So today I want to tell you about two different types of Hemi ticks that you need to be aware of and kind of what to do. Now, I do also want to take just a really quick second and acknowledge my good buddy, B. Mason, who's also a fantastic YouTuber and a very knowledgeable guy, because I actually talked with him about some of this to make sure I fully understood really both types of Hemi ticks and what to expect if that happens. So at the end of the day, the first one that I want to speak about is on the 5.7. It pretty much only affects the 5.7s. Now, it doesn't just affect the Charger or the Challenger 5.7 Hemis. Also, you know, they put that thing in a lot of other vehicles. They put them in Durangos and all the 1500s. And it is a huge, it is definitely a huge offering from Dodge and from Mopar. So I think that this one here is something you need to be aware of. It is the first type of Hemi tick. And basically what happens is on the exhaust manifold, the bolts will actually start backing out, and you know, whether it's just causing the thing to kind of unthread or whatever it may be. And typically what happens is the tick will start basically as soon as you start the car. And after about, say, 5 to 10 seconds, after the exhaust manifold has had a chance to heat up a little bit, the tick usually goes away. So right on startup, you'll hear a tick, and then usually it will go away, and you don't hear it again until the next time you do a cold start. So this does make a pretty telltale clicking noise from underneath the hood. So it's actually pretty easy to diagnose, and most often it actually occurs right there on the exhaust manifold at cylinder number 8. Not in every case, but that seems to be the case a lot. Now, the good news about that is you can usually just kind of get some new bolts and a new gasket, and oftentimes, you know, put those in, and that will fix the problem. Now, the other Hemi tick is, well, it's a little bit more invasive. Now, the second type of Hemi tick is a little bit more in depth, and this one can be, well, it can be a lot bigger deal. This can affect really any of the 5.7 or the 6.4 equipped Hemi vehicles. So it could be, you know, Charger, Challenger. It could be, obviously, you know, you've got Durango, really the whole fleet. I mean, they put these engines in a lot of their vehicles. But this one has to do with lifter failure. This is a much more invasive problem. Now, I will say, this problem, before I even go into this, really only occurs in like 2.5% to 5% of these engines. So it's not like you have to just fear going out and buying a Mopar because of this issue. And there are certainly things that you can do to kind of keep the issue from happening, and I will jump into this. But this particular Hemi tick does have to do with lifter failure. And how do you diagnose it? Well, typically what happens is when you start up the car at idle, you will hear the car or the engine actually making kind of a squeak or a ticking noise that is pretty pronounced. If you give it throttle or it's under load, typically that ticking tends to go away. But once you come back down to idle, it will actually start doing it again. So anytime the car is at idle, you will hear that thing start doing the ticking noise. It's not like the one before with the exhaust where typically, you know, 10 seconds and then it goes away and it doesn't come back until another cold start. This one, anytime the car is at idle, you'll hear the car start ticking like that. So the issue really stems from the MDS system that's offered in these Hemi engines. This actually doesn't affect the Hellcats because the Hellcats don't have MDS lifters. Essentially, that is your cylinder deactivation. Now, I do also want to point out that it's not just a Mopar thing. Keep in mind that Chevy has had their DOD or displacement on demand technology out there for a while as well. And guess what? It affects those engines as well. There's just something about that type of lifter that can sometimes cause failure. So what really does cause the lifters to fail? So there are really a couple of things that can attribute to lifter failure. One of which is really simple, guys. It's just about preventative maintenance. How often do you get your oil changes? Yes, I realize that a lot of the oil manufacturers will say, well, look, you can go 10,000 miles without doing an oil change. Keep in mind, guys, these Hemis really are not designed for that. Even if you read the manual, it says, look, don't go over 5,000 miles regardless of what kind of engine oil you're putting in here. And, we like to drive our cars pretty hard. Well, the truth is, if you don't get your engine oil changed regularly, it can have a negative effect on your engine. So it's all about getting that oil changed at regular intervals and just being super diligent with it. We really should be doing that anyway. And the other thing is, how long does the car really sit and idle? Believe it or not, it's not so much. Somebody may say, oh, look, I only have 10,000 miles on the thing. But if the car sits for hours on end just idling, believe it or not, it has more to do. I mean, that's still excessive wear on the engine. The car's still spending time on, even though you can't necessarily tell by looking at the odometer. So it's more about engine hours rather than miles sometimes. And if you get that excessive wear on these and they just spend tons of time sitting there idling, keep in mind that you're still not getting enough of that fresh oil through there, because even though it may say, you're 4,000 miles, if you've got a ton of engine hours on there, that can affect it as well. So what really happens in these naturally aspirated Hemis when the lifters do start to fail? Well, essentially what happens is you can actually shave down the camshaft a little bit. As that lifter is kind of moving back and forth in there, contacting the camshaft, it can actually start shaving the camshaft down. And then, of course, those shavings have to move around in there, and oftentimes will move around the engine. And it can definitely cause catastrophic failure. So it's definitely bad news if you do hear the Hemi tick. So you have to get that addressed right away. So some people have actually said that the Hemi tick on these things is perfectly normal. Well, I'm here to tell you the tick is not normal. So if you happen to be under warranty still, make sure if you hear the ticking noise that I'm talking about that you actually get in to the dealership and have them check it out right away. I've actually heard SRT techs tell people, oh, that's just the way the engine sounds. Well, guess what? Definitely something to take into account, because, I don't want to kind of spread sort of mass panic out there, as I mentioned, and I don't want to have people just be paranoid about things, but it is something that you should probably listen for. And then if you do hear it, you need to get the car in right away, hopefully to minimize the damage. And it can cost, an average about $5,000 to actually completely disassemble one of these engines and sort of fix the damage. And that is essentially what you have to do if you're actually having lifter failure. The heads have to come off, and it is a pretty invasive process. So it's better to get it taken care of immediately, like that day, if you happen to hear that ticking going on. So I realize some people are going to ask, hey, look, Racer X, if I'm concerned about this Hemi tick thing, is there something I can do to kind of be proactive to prevent the problem from happening? Well, there are a few things. Certainly you could go with non-MDS lifters. You could go with like the Hellcat lifters, and I have some people that have actually done that. It's not a super cheap thing to do, and it may not necessarily be something that you have to do. It's something you could do, but also keep in mind that in order to put those lifters in there, you have to get in there and revise some things in the tune. So, as you realize, when people tune their cars, it voids the warranty. So you do have to keep that in mind as well. So there's some give and take with that. So I want to kind of finish up with a couple of very important thoughts here. So I realize when it comes to car folks, a lot of us are very, very meticulous about how we keep our cars. And we should be, especially with performance cars. And I don't want everybody to think out there, oh, if I go and buy a Mopar, this is definitely going to happen. As I mentioned before, the chance of actually having a lifter failure or even the exhaust manifold failure on these is pretty slim. I don't personally know anybody that's had it happen. I have seen it happen before. I realize it's out there, but there's always that speculation. If something happens to just a few cars, everybody's worried that it's going to happen to every car. And I don't want people to think, these Hemis, one, aren't great engines. They produce great power. They're actually fantastic power plants, and they're used a lot. And obviously, FCA, Dodge, Ram, whoever, they would not be in the business of making engines that failed often because, quite frankly, they would go bankrupt. So I wouldn't go out and just not purchase a Hemi because of this lifter failure issue that is out there, because it's just really not that prevalent, guys. I want to make sure you guys understand that. But I just wanted you to be able to sort of diagnose, know what to listen for, and also understand that there are a couple of different types of that Hemi tick. And like I said, it doesn't just affect Mopar cars either, guys. So just be diligent. If you're ever in doubt, take it into the dealership and have them look at it, and just take great care of your cars, and chances are they're going to take great care of you. So guys, that's about it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the next one. So until then, Racer X.